The Buccaneers are supposedly stuck in purgatory. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Here with you. Well, it was Monday through Friday. We've hit the offseason. I'll be with you at least 3 days a week for the month of June. Typically, it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but I will keep you guys updated with a couple of things going on this month where things are going to fluctuate, but at least 3 days a week for the coming month here on the Locked On Bucs podcast. Right now, you can become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, plus one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Had a huge increase in insiders recently. I want to thank all of you new insiders. You guys have been awesome. I've really enjoyed the conversations. No ads, no hashtags, no anything, just genuine one-on-one private conversations with me. Go to joinsubtext.com/lockedonbucks to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Baker Mayfield talks about ways he's working on improving, and he talks about some of the rookie class. But let's start things off with the bad news. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are stuck in purgatory. I mean, that's news to me, but that's what Douglas Clawson of CBS Sports says. And Clawson wrote a column about the teams stuck in quarterback purgatory, lumping the Buccaneers in with the likes of the New Orleans Saints, the New York Giants, the Seattle Seahawks, the Cleveland Browns, the Arizona Cardinals, and mentioned coming soon, the Miami Dolphins. About the Buccaneers, he said, quote, Baker Mayfield signed a 3-year deal worth $100 million to stay in Tampa Bay after leading the Bucs to a playoff win last year. Given Mayfield's up and down career, his mostly average season in 2023 before breakout performances down the stretch and in the postseason, I'd say the Buccaneers are firmly in quarterback purgatory. The way out? Well, Tom Brady isn't coming out of retirement, and neither is the 2002 Buccaneers defense. So I think this Tampa Bay team has probably hit its ceiling. For what it's worth, Ryan Wilson has the team drafting Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers in his way too early 2025 mock draft, end quote. Well, first and foremost, we know how those way too early mock drafts worked out for everybody that had the Bucs in the running for Caleb Williams last year. But let me get this straight. The player that everyone decided was washed up and completely done revitalizes his career under a first-time offensive coordinator and gets to the divisional round of the playoffs for the second time in his career with a second team, and he has the Bucs trapped in purgatory. Yet Kirk Cousins is the savior of Atlanta and makes them the runaway favorite in the NFC South. Russell Wilson, after 4 terrible seasons, is going to get Pittsburgh back in the hunt and make the Steelers AFC North contenders again. And Caleb Williams, who has never taken a snap in the NFL, is going to lead the Bears to the postseason this year. Make it make sense. Anybody at all, make it make sense. You can't, because it doesn't. At this point, I'm convinced that the vast majority of NFL media, or just sports media in general, are never going to buy into Baker Mayfield. It doesn't matter what he does, they're not going to buy in. Last year, he was going to be the worst quarterback in the division. This year, he's being picked to have a regression compared to last year's numbers, and the Bucs are being picked to finish second or third. I mean, Connor Orr, you remember that guy, the Sports Illustrated dude that Jason Light dunked on at the Combine after he picked the Bucs to go 2-15? Yeah, he picked the Saints to win the South and the Bucs to finish third behind the Saints and the Falcons. And I don't get it. And look, I know a lot of Bucs fans weren't Baker fans when he came in last year, and there are some that still aren't. There are some that are just never going to like Baker Mayfield. But to say that the Bucs are in quarterback purgatory because he got a $100 million deal and is up and down and was mostly average last year, it's asinine. Baker put up career numbers last year, led the Bucs to the divisional round with the worst rushing attack in the league and arguably one of the worst interior offensive lines in the league. He helped Mike Evans reach one of his best seasons in his career, and he did it all under a first-time offensive coordinator against a first-place schedule, and after he was unceremoniously shipped to and from the Carolina Panthers in that dumpster fire of an organization. No one can tell me that Baker didn't will this team to victory some weeks and that he wasn't a galvanizing force behind their success. How many places outside of this show did you see or did you read about picking the Bucs to win the division last year? I'm guessing you can count them on one hand. A lot of the credit for the Bucs doing exactly that goes on the shoulders of number 6. There's a reason he got that contract, and there's a reason that the Bucs believe in him. I think at this point, it's also fitting that the media doesn't believe in him because they never really believe in the Buccaneers either. I talked about it last week. It was a mailbag question when someone asked what the Bucs had to do in order to get some respect in the national media. And I flat out said, it's just not going to happen. It doesn't matter how many Super Bowls they win. It doesn't matter, how often they get to the playoffs or if they win playoff games or if they win divisions. It won't happen. The same thing can be said for Baker Mayfield. It does not matter what he does. It does not matter what he accomplishes. He's not going to get his flowers from anyone outside of the media that consistently covers the Buccaneers. If you're talking about national media, you're talking about people that cover other teams talking about the Buccaneers. You're talking about, whether it's NFL media or just the talking heads that you see on television that talk about all sports, no one outside of Buccaneers media sees what Baker Mayfield does and has already done for this Buccaneers team. So he's never going to get the kind of praise and respect that he should, much like the team that he is the quarterback for, because it doesn't matter how many consecutive division titles they have, how many consecutive playoff appearances they have. Doesn't matter that they have double the Super Bowls of every other team in the division combined. They're never, ever, ever going to get the respect they deserve. Baker Mayfield, however, is working on making sure that people like Clausen and Orr have to eat a big pile of crow. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Some of you probably saw on Twitter that I was able to take my son to Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals so he could root on his Celtics, and I would love nothing more than to take him to an NBA Finals game in Boston. Getting the tickets on Game Time would be the easy part. It's the rest of the trip that would be difficult. See, with Game Time, I could wait until the last minute as prices begin to drop, or even wait until after tip-off when prices go down as much as 60%. And the process is as easy as you can get. I can use Apple Pay and have the tickets on my phone in just 2 clicks. No surprises either. With all-in pricing, I would know exactly what I would spend when I'm looking for the seats that we would go for. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Everydayers, make sure you are coming back tomorrow. We'll be back with another episode. Thinking it's time we're going to drop into the Jalen McMillan deep dive. He is next on the list. In the meantime, do you want to hear the latest news from all around all the sports? The NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup, the NFL news, because the NFL never sleeps, but you want to hear more than just national narratives, and you want the biggest stories without people screaming at each other? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Lots of stuff about Baker Mayfield today, and he did speak with the media on Tuesday about a couple of different topics, but we're going to start with the work he's putting in to get better. Every player, or at least every player with some level of success in the NFL, or you could say any player with some level of success in professional sports, is constantly working to improve their game, whether it's getting better at something that they didn't do well in the past, adding a new element to their game to try to gain an advantage. Every player wants to get better, because if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Baker was asked what he was focusing on improving, and he said, quote, "You try to improve everything, but for me right now, it's slowing my feet down a little bit. I've always kind of had constantly moving feet like some of the quarterbacks do, but just slowing it down to where I'm not passing up progressions, and it's smooth through the process. Just going through it, being decisive with the ball, and getting everybody on the same page is the most important thing." And then he was asked what he meant by slowing down his feet, and he said, quote, "When I say calming my feet, sometimes I process information pretty quickly and my feet get out of whack a little bit. Obviously, when it comes down to playing football, you can always run for a first down, whatever you've got to do, but not drifting in the pocket, not putting extra stress on those guys up front, and just going through it in a balanced setting and just trying to handle it the best way possible," end quote. There's no doubt that there were plenty of times last season that Baker Mayfield had a case of happy feet and was kind of bouncing around and moving a lot. At the same time, there were plenty of those times that it was needed because there was pressure from the inside that he was trying to avoid. And the amount of times that he ended up having to scramble around or take off and run, we pretty much lost count after the first month of the season. If Liam Cohen is able to get Baker to relax in the pocket a little bit and give him the confidence that he isn't going to get blown up less than 2 seconds after taking the snap, Baker's ability to read and react to the defense and find the right guy down the field is going to be a big problem for Buccaneers opponents next season. I mean, really think about it for a minute. Baker had a career high in completion percentage last year at 64.3%. Think about how much better that number could have been if his protection had been just average. Not great, not good, just average. If he wasn't having to rush throws or throw passes away because of internal pressure, think about the number of sacks that he took. He took 40. It was the third time in his career that he took 40 or more sacks. Think about how many times he had to throw passes away because of that pressure chasing him off of his spot, and he had to get rid of the ball. You know, think about the fact that he only threw 10 interceptions and had nearly a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. All of those numbers could have been better. It reminds me a little bit of a story that Bruce Arians told in his book, The Quarterback Whisperer. For those that haven't read it or haven't listened to it, I listened to it on Audible just because I'm able to listen to a lot of audiobooks. So I listened to it. And he talks about a story where Peyton Manning was warming up before a game against the New England Patriots, and his footwork was all over the place. So Bruce being Bruce, he goes over and he makes some smart aleck comment to Peyton Manning to get him riled up over something completely irrelevant. And all of a sudden, Manning was so busy thinking about being irritated by Bruce's comment that his footwork went right back to the way it was supposed to be. He stopped thinking about his feet, started thinking about something else, and the muscle memory kicked in. We talk all the time about football IQ and seeing and assessing information quickly. And we talk about accuracy and arm strength and the it factor. But one thing we don't talk about much when it comes to quarterbacks is their footwork, and we should. Having good footwork in the pocket and keeping your feet steady instead of bouncing around or having those happy feet is vital to the success of a quarterback at this level. You can get away with bad footwork in high school. Typically, high school quarterbacks are the best athlete on the field. And then you can get away with it to some extent, even in college. But at the NFL level, it can derail your career before your career even has a chance to really get started. Every player on the Buccaneers has something that they can work on, especially Baker Mayfield. But I like that this is the starting point for him and what he's doing to help himself get into the next season. This is one of those things that once it's improved, the results are going to be seen in a lot of different facets of Baker's game with all the extra responsibilities that Baker is going to have in Liam Cohen's offense between the multiple play calls in the huddle, making sure he's pre-snap reading the defense and getting his offense into the right play, that has the best chance of success. The last thing that you need for him to be doing is worrying about his feet in real time. This is the time, OTAs, mini camp, into training camp, this is the time to start to hammer that in so that by the time the Bucs get to training camp, they get to the preseason, and then of course the regular season, it's pure muscle memory. There's no thinking, there's no dwelling on it. It's automatic. Then he can focus on everything else he needs to be doing on a play-by-play basis, and that in and of itself is going to improve his game. It's going to improve the offense's ceiling. It's going to improve everybody around him because it's one less thing that he has to worry about. All he has to worry about doing, getting up to the line of scrimmage, seeing what the defense has in front of them, setting somebody in motion. You can check into different things to try to get them to show, are they in man? Are they in zone? Where are the safeties? Where are the linebackers? Where's the mic? You get into all those things, and then Baker now has a multiple choice of plays that he can get the Bucs offense into that has the best chance of success. And I think that in and of itself is going to help the Buccaneers offense a lot this season. Liam Cohen is putting a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of his leaders on offense. That's Baker, that's Mike, that's Tristan, and to some extent, that's going to be Graham Barton. Baker Mayfield talked about Barton and the other rookies on offense. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. This next segment is brought to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you and start to eat you up a little bit. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and you might even be thinking the same thing this week. We have reached the stage in the year that I absolutely dread, where the NBA is wrapping up, the NHL is wrapping up, and it feels like it's going to take forever before we get to football season. Yeah, there's OTAs and mini camps, but it feels like training camp will never get here, and everyone just wants to see their favorite team hit the field. It's almost as if it leaves an empty feeling, and the summer is just going to last forever. Now, most of us have bigger problems in our lives than our favorite sports teams or our favorite sports being in season, but it's important to get even the little things off your chest every once in a while, and therapy can be different for everyone. Maybe you're starting off by getting the little things off your chest, and that turns into you getting the bigger things off your chest. And all of a sudden, you really start to see an improvement in your life. If you are thinking about giving therapy a try, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule, and you can get things off your chest to a licensed therapist, and you can change therapists at any time, no questions asked. Visit BetterHelp.com/locked on to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. Wrapping things up here on a Wednesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And I talked last week about Sarah Walsh on the NFL Network and the conversation that she had with Baker Mayfield regarding the Bucs first-round pick Graham Barton. Well, Baker talked with the media about not just Graham Barton, but the other two key rookies that the Bucs added on offense. Let's start with Barton, though. And Baker said, quote, "The one thing I'll say, playing center in the NFL, it's not easy. There are just so many different looks, fronts, blitzes, and just the communication. It's a whole different ballgame. I think he's handling it really well. Now, the physical aspects of Graham, he's a stud. He can move people off the ball. He's quick. Just the way he gets his feet up under him, how he leverages blocks and understands what we're trying to get done. That's really special. I think for him, he's got all the physical tools that he needs. That's why he got drafted that high, but it's taking time to learn it, get the reps. It's just going to take time for him. Luckily, he'll be surrounded by good people, though, and will get to learn from some greats as well," end quote. But Baker was also asked about wide receiver Jalen McMillan and running back Bucky Irving, who was already starting to garner some attention on social media. But remember, this is no pads, no contact, and anyone can look like a star. But Baker said, quote, "Jalen's got such a natural feel as a receiver. He's extremely smooth. One of those guys that doesn't look like he's covering a lot of ground because it looks effortless, but he really is. He's a guy that can run every route that you have in your route tree. He has really strong hands at the point of attack. He always attacks the ball when it's in the air, which is great to see for a young guy just to have that natural tendency." Then Bucky, yeah, obviously it's a little hard in the run game stuff right now with no pads on, but the one thing I'll say about him, obviously he's got good hands, but when he decides to cut it upfield and get north and south, he goes. He decides and he hits it. That's good to see, end quote. I've mentioned how much I love the fit of Jalen McMillan on this team, and that I think if he's not the locked and loaded wide receiver 3 on this team by week 1, it'll definitely be before we're in the month of October. Building that connection with Baker now, this early in the process, is only going to pay dividends once the Bucs get to training camp and really start to get things going. Then you have Mike Evans now at the optional team, the OTAs, basically, non-mandatory practices. Mike Evans is there. He's going to be working with Jalen McMillan. Chris Godwin has been there. He's working with Jalen McMillan. But something that Baker said reminded me of Mike Evans when he talked about how it doesn't look like he's covering a lot of ground because it looks effortless, but he really is. I mean, you can say the exact same thing about Mike Evans. He never looks like he's really going fast, but it's because he's got that long stride that he makes it look so easy. So love hearing that about Jalen McMillan. As for Barton, I love the physicality that Baker is talking about, but I'll say this about the mental game. That's kind of the reason that Evan Klosky and I talked about the possibility of Graham Barton not starting at center this season. Now, we both think that more than likely he will. I have him slotted in as the starting center for week 1, but there is a lot of pre-snap reads and responsibilities that fall on the shoulders of a center, and having a rookie go in and do that is going to be very, very tough. Barton is a really smart dude, and he is going to grasp things sooner than later, but there's a difference between being smart and having the intelligence of a veteran in those situations. Guys like Ryan Jensen had seen and been through everything. Barton has not. And there are going to be a lot of defenses that the Buccaneers face that will do what they can to confuse or throw Graham Barton off before the snap. There's going to be growing pains for him at the center position. And I still have all the confidence in the world that this is potentially an all-pro caliber player that the Bucs are going to have for the next decade plus. But I just don't want people going into the season thinking he's going to be an impenetrable wall from the jump. There's plenty of things that he saw at Duke, but Duke is out there playing an ACC schedule. Those are not NFL defenses. Those are not NFL defensive coordinators. He is going to see a lot of things for the first time this year, and there's going to be a learning curve. So, don't think that Barton is going to be the Andre Vasilevsky equivalent for the Buccaneers, where he's just a brick wall and nothing is going to get through. There are going to be some issues. There are going to be some mishaps, some mental mistakes. There are going to be times that he'll flat out get beat by the guy on the other side of the field. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he has all the tools to be one of the best centers in the NFL. It's about doing it up here. As well, I mean, for those of you listening, obviously, I'm pointing to my head, but it's about getting the mental part of the game down, because the physical side of the game, he's got locked and loaded. And then finally, Bucky Irving. I like what I'm hearing about him. I really, really do. And I love that he can bring the same level of threat in the pass game that Rachaad White can. And I'm going to be honest, Rachaad might be a top 5 pass catching back in the NFL. And if Bucky is as sure-handed as Rachaad is, and then he's that quick cut and gone kind of running back, the Bucs backfield is going to be much more formidable than it was the last couple of years. And I'm not getting too excited about it right now. Again, I love the potential. I love the potential of Barton. I love the potential of Tyke Smith and Braswell and Jalen McMillan. And I love the potential of Bucky Irving. But I want to see him running the ball with full contact and pads on. I want to see how he does in the pass game, both catching and running and picking up the blitz with those pads, with that contact before I pass too much judgment. You got to have that, especially in the run game, because right now it's shorts, jerseys, helmet, and he can do kind of whatever he wants. Once we see the contact start, we can really begin to assess what he brings to the offense. But all things are really pointing in the right direction for Bucky Irving early on in this process. That is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Coming up tomorrow, I will have my breakdown of Jalen McMillan and what he's going to bring to this Buccaneers offense. Same as always, I took the highest graded game, the lowest graded game, and then just another game according to Pro Football Focus's grades. Sat down, broke them all down, watched McMillan as best I could. I'll get into it more tomorrow, but that is coming up on Thursday's episode. In the meantime, check out everything going on over at BucsNation.com. Make sure that you are following on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get one-on-one conversations with me via text message. No ads, no anything, just chatting on your phone. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.